Hey, 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 hey! Happy Thursday, episode 7. Go FUD yourself. JD Gagnon here, my good friend Kiara. What is up?
Hello, welcome to Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
As we've alluded to a few times, I'm hopelessly Canadian. And so amidst my minus 33 degree cold snap, polar vortex cold snap again, I thought we should talk about
Celsius.
all the
Celsius and Fahrenheit. It's actually the same at minus 32.
Well, I thought it was the same at minus 40.
I think it's 32. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure.
I don't know anything about Fahrenheit.
That's
it's
crazy cold. Yeah.
And I feel like we're getting the same cold shoulder from the Canadian Securities Administrators.
Oh my God. Wow. Wow, look at that. But
you like that?
Yeah. So what did you learn? What are they saying?
Yesterday yesterday was announced, then today, of course, all the news is coming out about it. But basically, the Canadian Securities Administrators have new crypto guidelines. So if you want to participate in crypto within Canada, you can only go do so through an approved body. So it doesn't specifically say that they're going to outlaw anybody in particular or any particular thing, but those who are like the retailers will actually need to register with the CSA. Everything they register with the CSA may become
CSA
public.
Is Canadian Securities Association, I think, right?
Yeah. Administrators. I had said it out loud, and it's on the bottom ticker, JD.
Hey, just trying to help people out that can't read.
I hear you. Canadian Securities Administrators. So basically, everyone who is a retailer in crypto in Canada has 30 days to publish a revised pre-registration undertaking. So this is basically pre-registration for securities. Kind of wacky doodle.
Essentially, to like distill this down to something that makes sense to us normal people that play in crypto. Essentially, what they're saying in Canada is that every platform must register as a regulated entity. Anybody that is doing anything with Canadian people, Canadian citizens and residents, that they must register. And by extension, they're implying that they believe these things are securities. And the reason that they're implying that is because the CSA is the governing body for securities. It'd be similar to the SEC saying, like, this is actually pretty big, and this is kind of FUDy, because believe it or not, Canada has been doing a lot of enforcement or regulation by enforcement for the last number of years, actually. And believe it or not, all the major retailers, all the major on and off ramps, exchanges, et cetera, that meaningfully service Canadian customers actually already had to register. So two of the most common ones, Newton and CoinSquare, have both had to register with IROC, which is the Investment Industry Regulatory Oversight Commission, I think. In Canada, I can't remember the exact definition of the acronym, but they had to register as IROC entities that can sell individual securities. So, I mean, the writing is somewhat on the wall, at least from the Canadian government. And I mean, this isn't surprising. The Canadian government has been fairly regulation heavy in every industry. And whatever, we could debate the merits of regulation.
In a lot of regulation recently.
In many industries. But Canada has been generally leaning towards the extensive end of the regulatory continuum. And there's some other jurisdictions we talked about yesterday, Singapore, Dubai, other places that are saying, hey, we understand that there's a huge market, there's a huge opportunity here for this tech innovation. Let's try to build ways that enable that and encourage it and support technical innovation. Whereas in Canada, they've done quite the opposite. And I mean, in their mind, in the regulators' minds in Canada, they're trying to protect Canadian citizens. Sure, I totally get it. But again, I mean, if we really wanted to take that to its illogical end, nobody would be allowed out of their house because people could get in a car accident or get struck by lightning, even in their house. Actually, you actually should wear a styrofoam suit wrapped in bubble wrap everywhere you go, just in case. I mean, I'm obviously tongue in cheek, but
you're a little bit tongue in cheek. But there's like a big issue in Edmonton about that right now. So, Well, they announced that they are looking at doing 15-minute walking cities, which basically is so that you can have you can walk to the grocery store in 15 minutes, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And of course, the backlash on that is that we're going to be turned into a District 9 style city.
Yeah, pretty soon it'll be Hunger Games. It'll be like district versus district, right? and you have
I'm North End, so my district's totally going to win.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but if you live in the north end of Edmonton, it's kind of like
I feel like wrong side of the train tracks is pretty universal, you know?
Yeah, it's just a little bit more rough around the edges than the rest of Edmonton. Now, for what it's worth, I also lived in the north of Edmonton when I was in university. So
yeah, we're the entrepreneurial hub.
some of us move beyond it, I guess. Anyways, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting to look at this, and one of the reasons we led with that today was it's a fairly big contrast to what we talked about yesterday, right? We're talking about geographies and regulatory regimes that are leaning into crypto and leaning into tech innovation. I mean, Canada, unfortunately, has never really been a tech leader, generally speaking. But nonetheless, they're making it near impossible for innovators in the country to participate. Go ahead.
Kind of two other things on this. So before we move too far from it, according to some of the news articles that I read, such as this one from Decrypt, part of why they're doing this is because of stablecoins. They think that the nomenclature about stablecoin is misleading. They haven't been that stable. And for example, Terra. So part of this is that you won't be allowed to trade stablecoins unless those stablecoins have been registered as securities within the next year. The first 30 days are registering that you are using those stablecoins on your retailer. So this is really interesting because stablecoins are kind of the way that a lot of people are entering that crypto space, right?
Well, yeah, and that's also been a fairly hot topic in the US also is how do we view stablecoins? And so as an example of this, foreign currencies in America are considered derivatives or commodities, pardon me, not derivatives, commodities. And so they are under the purview of the CFTC. But that's pretty clear. And so what some people have been implying, and again, I'm not a regulation attorney, I'm not a securities attorney, I'm none of this. But what people have been, this is all anecdotal. So what people have been implying by that is, or assuming, is that they're looking at one-to-one backed stablecoins as still either at the very least a commodity, if not potentially a security. And so that's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. The 30 days to say that you allow, stable coin trading or swaps or whatever on your platform is one thing. That's just essentially self-identification. Self-identification. You're just saying, hey, we're doing this, so you're aware of it. We have a year to comply. The chances, I think, of any of the major stablecoin issuers accepting that kind of so if any of them actually registered in Canada as a security or even as a commodity, that then implies to all the other jurisdictions that these guys accept that as being the path, and it can completely change the trajectory and future of these projects and stablecoins. Again, another short-sighted decision, I think, on behalf of Canada. I think there's other ways to step into it without coming out guns blazing with fairly restrictive, first passes at this. It's going to be interesting. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of algo stables either, because they've outright essentially banned algo stables or implied that they will. I'm not the biggest fan, but there are some really, really performant algo stables that have been amazing, like Frax. I mean, we've been talking to Sam since the very beginning when he launched Frax, and Frax has expanded significantly. But at the time we were watching to see how is Frax going to perform. How is the peg going to stay, and it performed as good or better than even the one-to-one backed, USDT, USDC. Like, they deviated from peg generally more than Frax, which is kind of crazy. Now, the difference there, like there's obviously a lot of nuance in the securities laws and how those are registered, and collateralized is one thing, non-collateralized is another, and there's outsized risk if you don't understand the mechanics behind the stablecoin design, which for most people is confusing. Like trying to understand what Frax actually does and how it maintains peg to someone that's in the space, us, when we first were learning it, it took a couple of calls with the Frax team to explain it. So like, you know, to the average person, I totally get why, you know, the government is trying to protect from that. I just think forcing collateralized stable coins to register in a small jurisdiction like Canada, no one's going to do it. So all that means is that Canadians won't have access to these markets, period. That's it. Like
it has wild implications for developing blockchain solutions in Canada, right?
Well,
it's almost kind of like what we were talking about with China yesterday, is people are going to be routing their Web3 companies from Canada through other countries for hiring and stuff like that. And then we won't really have that tech here, right?
Well, I mean, when we started Rome Blockchain Labs, I mean, I was still in Canada, and other than you and a couple of other people, we hired everybody from outside of Canada on purpose. And I mean, I'm not going to get too deep into it, but there's just a lot of restrictions in Canada. There's a lot of regulation. There's a lot of oversight. I mean, some regulation, great. Too much regulation, prohibitive. And I think Canada is moving towards the too much.
So I was kind of thinking about the motivation of this, and sort of like there's a lot of opt-in. There's a lot of bias for people who are opting in. So if you participate in a research survey that is self-selection, you are going to have something loud to say about whatever that research survey is.
Yeah,
so
it's like anti-selection, essentially. Right?
Yeah. So those who have been talking to something like the PSA or IROC about crypto probably have bad things to say. And one example of that is, you know, I used Newton for a while. Like you said, Newton's one of the most popular retail exchangers in Canada. So you can actually go from fiat to crypto, etc. And I had an issue like with them. I had, you know, some sort of small problem. And the only place that I could get contact with them to resolve that issue was via Reddit. Not a big deal, except then their Reddit is just blown up with complaints. And there's no way that the majority of people are complaining, because then they wouldn't have a business in Canada.
Yeah.
But the Reddit is just full of complaints because it's the only place that we were able to.
It's the only venue. Yeah.
Right.
They now have a different customer service structure.
For sure. This was like a year and a half ago. This was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But the primary rhetoric on the Reddit was, if you don't help me soon, I'm going to report you to Canada.
Whoever.
Yeah. Like, I'm going to report you to the governing body that I can find about banking, crypto, finance, et cetera, in Canada. So if the CSA is really only hearing that type of FUD, if they're only hearing the bad, it makes sense that they're kind of moving towards more regulation, because it's probably tying them up a lot, right?
But I mean, regulators.
But
that's kind of everything, right? Like customer reviews are another example of this. Like just general product reviews. That you like, people are generally only motivated to do that stuff if they're either like beyond positively happy about something, like you went way beyond their expectations. And generally speaking, my expectations when I'm paying good money for something is that it works. So when it works, I'm not telling the whole world about it. I'm just happy that it did what I expected it to do. The other side of that spectrum is people that are, you know, again, in some cases, maybe a very vocal minority, some cases because they have no other venue, but some just because that's what human nature, right? So yeah, you're right, I think, but regulators this is not new, right? Like this.
It's not new, but we're so short-sighted, right? They're put in their post for a few years and they have to respond and make it look good so they can move on to the next thing, right? As individuals, not as the body.
Yeah, of course. And it's, I mean, I get it. There's a lot of mud on a lot of faces from 2022, right? From regulators. Like here we are, you know, penalizing some of these smaller fringe actors and so on throughout the last year. But the ones that have the most catastrophic impacts, Terra Luna, FTX, all these, somehow they went under the radar of regulation, which is like, a little surprising, like to me anyways. But I understand why now there's like this, the pendulum has swung a little too far the other direction because everybody's concerned, obviously. And a lot of people lost money. I mean, I'm kind of joking about it a little bit, but I mean, I don't know too many people that weren't impacted somehow by the events of 22, notwithstanding the obvious market decline. We're all impacted by that. But I mean, directly, like funds not existing where they should anymore. And that sucks. And regulators, obviously get a lot of that heat. Everybody, in the space doesn't want regulation until something goes sideways. And then they say, well, why wasn't there regulation? Well,
exactly.
There's got to be a middle ground somewhere. Anyways. Where? Not in Canada, apparently.
Yeah, not here. Maybe in Hong Kong, as we learned yesterday. I don't know.
No, soon. Maybe Dubai. Singapore? I don't know.
Okay, on the other side, so that was FUD. Canada is cold. We're getting a cold crypto shoulder. I'm going to put that on a t-shirt, cold crypto shoulder. What is going on that's good today, JD? What was the big news?
Well, Coinbase is launching their essentially permission. There you go. Essentially a permissioned ETH2. And it's kind of their approach to moving a lot of their activities on chain and contributing, being a meaningful part of the contribution to a decentralized future. I don't have a whole ton of information on the specifics of how they're building it and what specifically will be permissioned and how. But it is exciting. I think that just kind of goes to show the testnet's up. People can go check it out. It just goes to show that, the sentiment is starting to lean towards something will happen from a regulatory perspective. Let's make sure we're a part of that conversation. And Coinbase, as probably the largest steward in the space, at least the largest one that most Americans trust, or most North Americans trust, it is probably a good first mover there. I'm not sure if it'll be the be all end all, who knows? But if anybody can pull it off, I think Coinbase has a pretty good chance at doing so. And at the very least, I think it's going to help open people's minds to what we actually still gain when we have a permissioned ecosystem. We're gaining all of the tech advantages of blockchain, with the exception of privacy and anonymity, which for all intents and purposes doesn't exist anyways on the blockchain. Blockchain is actually more transparent than your normal banking. So, I mean, thinking that we're going to live in Western domiciles and not have taxation oversight and money laundering oversight, like that's like standard governmental practice in the West. So anyways, very exciting. And our good friends at Moonwell have also announced today that they are launching an instance of Moonwell on Coinbase's new ecosystem, which is super, cool. Super amazing. I mean, it's not really surprising to me. Luke obviously left Coinbase to start Moonwell, to be a part of Moonwell, and a few of the other team members also have histories at Coinbase. So to me, it's a really solid alignment. It makes perfect sense. Follow Moonwell on Twitter. Great team. Launched into the fastest declining market of 2022, but they've really held it together, and I think it's gonna be exciting watching them expand to base. So that's super awesome. 1inch also came out with a permissioned offering announcement today that I saw today. I don't know if the announcement was today, but and so they're doing something similar. Some version, again, I don't have all the details, some version of KYC, AML compliance in a permissioned ecosystem. I'm not sure exactly their approach, what assets they're going to accept or allow in that eco. But again, another fairly large name in the space, signaling that we're kind of all of the opinion that some version of regulation is coming. So let's start getting prepared instead of panicking when the government of the US says you have 30 days to comply. And we're all like, what? What do you mean 30 days to comply? Like that's also kind of crazy, which is what Canada did. 30 days, like.
It's 30 days to fill out a form, or so they say.
Well, just like Gensler said the other day, that all Kraken had to do was fill out a form. Yeah. Okay. So anyways, you know, a little bit of FUD today coming out of Canada, but I think, you know, it's definitely balanced out by some of the exciting news coming out of the US today. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff going on. We were joking about this before we started the stream that, you know, all of the things that we thought last night were going to be, you know, the biggest stories have actually kind of evolved to not be the biggest stories. A lot of stuff happened overnight this morning, so we had to adjust it. I mean, there's some other cool things that have happened. You know, that Anchor announcement, liquid staking products. I don't want to call them LSD, liquid staking derivatives, because of course we don't believe they are a derivative per se. And so anyways, that's becoming a real thing, because again, regulators globally have kind of signaled at the very least that they're not 100% sure how staking should be regulated. But the thought is that there's going to be some meaningful regulation. So now there's a flight to on-chain staking options, because there's a lot of permissionless options that will exist and continue to exist. And so that's been exciting. Anchor, of course, announced a fairly meaningful partnership with Microsoft, and the market loved it, obviously.
Check that out, but it's yesterday's news.
Yeah, old news. But again, we're not trying to. The purpose of this is not to give people like alpha to go buy something. I mean, it's to try to help just frame people's understanding of what's going on and what some of this stuff means, and cut the shit of some of the headlines that, as we talked about yesterday, are pretty clickbaity. You know, what is this actually saying? What is the actual implication for us and for the space? I think that's what we're trying to do. Anyways, that's all I got for today. Pretty exciting 24 hours. Let's see what happens over the next 24. We'll chat with you all tomorrow.
Tomorrow's FU Friday.
FU Friday. Fuck yeah. I mean, FU, yeah. That'll be good. You know, we'll address all the large FUD from the week that we haven't already talked about for FU Friday. Yeah. So 12:30 Eastern tomorrow. We'll be here all next week. Gonna be on location. At least I am in Denver. So hopefully I can find a good place to do these every day. Should be fun. Maybe we'll bring on some guests. Who knows? We'll see. Anyways, have a wicked rest of the day, everybody. Kiara, till next time.
FU, JD.
FU.